All right then. Hello, willkommen, bienvenue. Time for another Amish Inquisition episode 375 on Sunday, the 11th of May, 2025. I'm Phil.
And I'm Matt.
Ben's not here this week.
No.
But never fear, because we're joined down the line from Normandy by Emma Goodwin. How are you, Emma?
I'm very well, thanks, Phil. How are you?
Oh, it's not in my bed. Try again. Can you hear us? Can we hear you now?
I can.
Yes!
Hey, Phil. How you doing? Hi, Matt.
We are good, thank you. Lovely to have you.
It is, yeah. We've got Paul to thank. Paul, the esoteric explorer. He recommended you.
Nutrient Nirvana.
That's it.
Paul.
Yeah. That's
He
it.
does magnesium in gelatin capsules, and that for me is a big winner because I don't like these methyl cellulose vegan friendly capsules. They're not really human friendly.
I just thought capsules were capsules. What's all that about?
Well, they used to be gelatin, fish gelatin or bovine gelatin, and then they decided to make them out of plant cellulose, which is fine for vegetarians and vegans, but for those of us who don't want very difficult to digest heavy cellulose in our guts, if you're taking any supplements, check the labels, and if it says methyl cellulose, that's going to be really tough on your digestion.
Right, and what is it you have to look for instead?
Well, hopefully we want gelatin, but not very many manufacturers of supplements make gelatin capsules these days.
Wow, I didn't even know
Paul's such a gem. Yeah.
I've been taking his magnesium super mix, or I can't remember what he calls it. It's like his grade A mixture. It's got two, maybe three different types.
4 actually, yeah. It's got taurate, malate, glycinate, and citrate, I think, all in a gelatin capsule. He calls it the advanced blend, I think.
That's right, yeah. And I tell you what, I don't get cramps the same. I don't know if it's related, but I used to get quite a lot of leg cramps, and very rare now.
100%, yeah. It's the miracle mineral of relaxation, magnesium. And we can get it from salad, from leafy greens, and from dark leafy greens and things like chlorella and spirulina and things like that.
Right. So if in so I suppose that the issue is in the modern day we don't really eat as well as we should. So how sort of ancestrally would people have got it in their diets, going back into like prehistory and stuff?
That's a really good question. Well, it's very high in sea salt as well. So if you're using a Celtic sea salt, that will be 50% magnesium and then all the other minerals under the sun, approximately. So sea salt give you quite a good dose of magnesium. But it's not just that we eat differently. It's that the soils are drastically different to how they were 100 years ago. And that's because of farming practices and the use of things like glyphosate, which is a herbicide, which chelates metals. So it holds on to the minerals. Minerals are metals, really. Magnesium's a metal, zinc is a metal, but we need these micro minerals in our system. And glyphosate holds on to specifically copper, actually, at such a rate that the soils are deficient, therefore the plants are deficient, therefore the animals are deficient, and therefore we are deficient.
Is this kind of one of the side effects of like a monocropping culture as well, in that I hear a lot about the term regenerative, I can't even say it, regenerative, you say it for me, Matt.
Regenerative?
Regenerative, yeah.
Regenerative farming.
Regenerative.
And as I understand it, it's like you get the land is used for multiple purposes rather than just having massive crops of corn and then a massive field of cows and then, mixing it all up.
We love regenerative agriculture. There's an amazing farmer called Will Harris in America who has a farm called White Oak Pastures. And there's a fabulous little 15-minute short film that you can watch called 100,000 Beating Hearts. And it shows how he went from, redneck cowboy All I thought about was how many pound of beef I could get from this land. He was fourth generation redneck cowboy. And he transformed his land using regenerative agriculture. And now he has 100,000 beating hearts on his land, not 700 head of cattle. Because it's more intensive than intensive, if you know what I mean. They say, how are you going to feed the world with normal agriculture? You have to do it intensively. You have to do feedlots and do intensive farming. But no, you can do regenerative farming, and it's actually much more productive and much more profitable,
Right. Got you.
according to Will from White Oak Pastures, anyway.
Yeah. Just going back to what you said about the cellulose, like the plant cellulose. I was listening to a podcast over a year ago, and the lady who was on the guest there was talking about what do you call it? Like cows, ruminants and such have more than one stomach,
Yeah.
and the purpose is to like digest plant matter, whereas we don't, and maybe that's why we have such problems with our gut and whatnot.
Well, I think we've got problems with our gut because of microdoses of pesticides and herbicides, which really doesn't help. And also, there's a myriad of other toxins that we're having to deal with, like cleaning products or the stuff they spray on your sofa to stop it being flammable. You know, fire retardants. You just got to breathe these days, and you're picking up toxins. So I think that's another reason why our gut microbiome has taken such a hit. And well, that's also affected by EMF frequencies, for instance, or also your emotions. Like if you get upset about something, you get a tight stomach, don't you? And then that affects your digestion as well. So there's lots of things, not just the food.
So just out of interest, because I've just bought a new sofa. What did he spray on the sofa? I know, obviously, like you say, a fire retardant, but what kind of chemical and what impact does that have?
I think it's bromine, but I'm not entirely sure. We'd
Right,
have
okay.
to we'd have to look it up. But anything that is chemical based and made by one of the chemical corporations
Mm.
is not going to be recognized by the body. And so then the body's going to have to pick it up and go, what the heck's this? And have to send it off to the liver to have it disassembled in that alchemical factory that is the liver, miraculous alchemical factory. And then we've got more little pieces of toxic stuff that your body's like, what the heck is that? I don't know, but we better deal with it. And then if the body can't deal with it right then, it will maybe store it in a fat cell, for instance, and say, I'll come back and get that later. But later never comes because we keep on breathing in more toxins. Yeah, do you see what I'm saying? So if people are not focused really on cleansing the body at the same time as ultimately nourishing it, at the same time as stopping putting in the things that are preventing it from working properly, then we've got a problem on our hands.
Of late, I would say maybe over the last 6 months, maybe a bit longer, I've been putting more things like turmeric in my food and cumin and stuff like that. Is there any truth in that it might be like a natural antioxidant?
I used to say to people, yeah, use turmeric in quantity with black pepper because I believed the um, alternative media, don't know what to call it, but they fed us this idea that it was anti-inflammatory. So 10 years ago, I was going, yeah, get your turmeric in there and your black pepper. And now I understand because you can't stay fixed in this game at this time. You have to be able to flex and change your mind on things. But cumin contains some not cumin, turmeric contains something called curcumin, which is anti-inflammatory. But if you eat the whole turmeric, it's quite high in oxalates, which can be inflammatory. So it's like, but a little bit of whatever is not going to do you harm. But if you're eating really high oxalate foods all day long, then you're going to be in trouble. So high oxalate foods are they're high in spinach, potatoes, chocolate, um, kiwis, rhubarb, raspberries, peanuts, almonds, You know, so, and a sweet potato and a spinach salad with a grated beetroot, and then a celery smoothie with whatever, and then peanut butter chocolate treat at the end, you've suddenly had 2,000 milligrams of oxalate, which are a naturally occurring plant toxin. But your body will struggle to process that much oxalate in one go. So it's building up in the body and kind of making us seize up a little bit. Anyway, I went off track there a bit. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
No. So the oxalates are, well, I don't know if you would say sort of bad, but too much of them would be considered to be an issue then, from what you're saying, because that sounded like well, I suppose I am guilty of eating quite a lot of chocolate.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So there's a lot in there, is there? Did you say?
There is, and some people can process it just fine, but others will struggle, and it's all to do with the biodiversity of your microbiome, which is your gut bugs. You know.
Okay. Does it help then if you have a 5/6-year-old shoving his dirty fingers in your mouth every so often with your gut biome and things like that?
I should say so. You know, the kids of farmers are renowned for their robust health, and that's because they eat dirt and they are around the farm animals and the dung and the mud and and that makes for a really strong microbiome. Yeah.
But this is, I don't, there are stories, aren't there, of children, but I was caught several times as a child under a bush in my mum and dad's back garden eating soil. So I don't know if
your body knew what you needed.
I was self-medicating at the age of 3.
Absolutely, yes. No, 100%. I reckon you were. Was it clay? Was it sand? Do you know what it was?
It's a clayey soil, yes, generally around here, I think. Yeah.
You know, when I was little, we used to have in the medicine cabinet kaolin and morphine.
Oh, nice.
I grew up I was born in 68, so I'll be 60 soon. But we had kaolin and morphine in the medicine cabinet. Literally, morphine, that's like heroin, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And kaolin is a clay.
Oh.
And clays are ever so healing because they're negatively charged. So they will stick to anything positively charged. And mostly the pathogens and the poisons in the body are positively charged. So that's a wonderful selective kind of remedy that's not going to touch your good gut bugs. It's not going to affect your cells, but it's going to affect anything with a positive charge. So clay is excellent. We call it a binder. And it acts sort of like a bouncer in a nightclub, evicting the pathogenic gut bugs or the pathogens or whatever, and making sure that they don't get reabsorbed in the gut. When we take clay as a tea, we just put a bit of powdered clay, green clay or bentonite clay, zeolite clay, put it in a little cup and just have a little drink of that after a meal. Helps with flatulence, helps with bloating, helps with all sorts.
I'll get some for Mrs.
Well,
oh,
I forgot to say at the start of the podcast that I'm not a doctor. This is not a medical podcast. Please don't take any medical advice from us. Always consult your healthcare professional before making any choices about your healthcare. But with that said, it makes me wonder. We've had big spikes in autoimmune conditions, things like eczema and what's it where you can't tolerate something like gluten intolerances, things like that. Allergies, yeah. And I always wonder if there's a link between like the super sanitized world we live in. We have all these adverts for kills 99.9% of all bacteria, and particularly during 2020, people went completely nuts with it. I remember watching people like sanitize the shopping when they brought it home before they put it away in the fridge and bonkers stuff like that. And I wonder if there's a correlation there,
100%. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I didn't ever use any of that hand sanitizer. I pretend to use it when there was someone on the door insisting. But yeah, I go into all of that in my book, Bagel Goggles, about the effects of too much sanitation. It's not good, actually, And I had a boyfriend when I was in my 20s, and he had bad asthma, And he remembers the day when his asthma started. And it was from his mum using two different cleaning products in the toilet at the same time, and then some kind of chemical reaction happened, and he opened the lid to have a whittle when he was little and just like gassed himself basically.
Wow.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, poor baby. Anyway, allergies and reactions to things in the environment are gut related. And I know people will be like, what do you mean? I've got itchy skin, or I've got asthma, or I've got eczema, or whatever. How could that be possibly be gut related? But your gut is the first line of defense. If you think we're like a tube, there's a mouth this end and then the other thing that end, and it's just a tube, right? And that barrier is, whatever you eat is sort of on the outside of you, if you know what I mean, if that barrier is intact. But if that barrier is permeable, and that's called leaky gut, then whole pieces of undigested strawberry or whole pieces of whatever it is you've ingested, maybe it's got glyphosate on it, or maybe it's been, some other toxin is on it, gets into your bloodstream. And the only thing really you want in your bloodstream is monosaccharides, like a simple sugar, and amino acids, which is like a simple protein, or short chain fatty acids. Once everything's been mashed up in your stomach and starts going through the gut, it should be just those little tiny building blocks. But what's happening is whole pieces of undigested, even if it's organic, strawberry or whatever, are getting through these leaky bits in your gut lining and getting into the bloodstream. And then your body is like, what the hell is that? Sends the emergency services to start, trying to kill it and break it down. And that is an inflammatory reaction. That's an inflammatory response. That's why you might get itchy eyes or itchy legs or itchy skin, or find it hard to breathe from an inflammatory response. And if you fix the gut, you don't need to be allergic to everything, to anything ever again.
We didn't have a show last week because I had to pick my lad up. He'd been on a school trip to Normandy. And there was you get the emails before you go and the protocols and the itinerary, and they had to take snacks for the coach because it was coach and then Channel Tunnel. It was like a mammoth journey. And woe betide any peanuts enter the coach and this just wasn't a thing when we were kids that I can remember. It's something that's really recent over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, and what's interesting is if you have the lactobacillus called rhamnosus in your gut, then it's highly unlikely that you will have a peanut allergy. But if that particular strain is lacking, then it's highly likely that you'll develop they've done some trials on that.
Right.
And so this is why we need to culture and cultivate a really beautiful biodiverse microbiome, which means not killing all known germs dead. It means sort of culturing and cultivating the biome of your kitchen as well. So cleaning with salt, or rubbing your wooden chopping board with a bit of garlic, or putting a splash of milk kefir on it and actually rubbing it in, because that's full of good bacteria. And it's the same story with your insides. It's the good bacteria that keep the pathogens and the bad bacteria at bay.
One of the changes I made a couple of years ago was using something called soap. Because our bathroom was full of these Lynx bottles of this green goo with flecks of metallic flecks in it, and my missus has to use I don't know what they call it, sensitive. It has to be such a brand, sensitive, because I've got sensitive skin and all that lot. And I just started using soap, not because it's cheap, but I just thought natural's probably better than, you look at the bottle and you read all the stuff that's in it and you think, can this really be good for me? Soap seems to work.
If you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be putting it. You shouldn't be putting it on your skin. If you're reading the label, you're like, what the hell's that?
Yeah.
Okay, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be putting it on your skin. And you certainly shouldn't be eating it either. So if you're ever reading labels and there's got something unpronounceable on the label, don't be eating it.
Yeah.
We just need whole foods. That's it. I've got a lovely big square block of Savon de Marseille, which is a French soap, and it's just made with olive oil. olive oil and lye, and I don't know what it's made of, but it's got hardly anything in it. It doesn't smell of anything, and it's literally green, like a really not attractive green color. But it's lasted me forever. And I've had it about 2 years, I think. Washing's really overrated.
How did you get into all this, Emma?
Well, I wasn't well, and my kids were not well. And I was anxious and depressed. I couldn't sleep. I had aches and pains. I had tummy aches. And my kids were all over the place with ADHD and autism spectrum, disorders and ticking and twitches and Tourette's. And we had all sorts of problems. And so I one day was flicking through something on YouTube, and by some happy accident chanced upon this lady talking about the microbiome, and it was Dr. Natasha. And she wrote this book called Gaps, which is this book here. It's got a signpost on the front, and it says something. It says autism, dyspraxia, ADHD, dyslexia, depression, schizophrenia, gut and psychology syndrome, natural treatments for all of these things. Wow. And I read the book, and I just was crying with relief because I understood. I just got it. I was like, oh my God, this is what it's all about. There is no real, you can call disease any name under the sun, and it's kind of handy to have a handle so that you can compare with other people and seek remedy or whatever. But really, there is no dis-ease. There's only toxicity and deficiency. Or deficiency and deficiency, or an excess of something, So if we tackle the toxicity and tackle the deficiency, usually the body is so smart, it sorts itself out. And it does it in exactly the right order that it needs to do it in as well. So really, we don't need to think, oh no, I've got fungal toenails. What am I going to do with that? Oh no, I've got achy knees. What am I going to do with that? Oh, I've got IBS. Oh, I'm bloated. I get migraines. Whatever the symptom is, your body will sort it out in the right order once you heal the leaky gut, basically. So all disease begins in the gut, according to, well, their history and his story, and the victor always writes the story, doesn't he? But Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, apparently said, all disease begins in the gut.
Wow.
And it's Hippocrates who gives us the Hippocratic Oath that the doctors say to first do no harm. And it's also the root of the word hypocrite, which is interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not for a moment suggesting that doctors are hypocrites at all, but it's just an interesting correlation. And I do a lot of wordplay stuff in my book as well, sort of looking at the spells and the words that we use and how they kind of mold our society.
So, sorry, were you going to say something? No, I was just wondering then, so you that was kind of the catalyst by the sounds of it, maybe coming across that information. So what, I suppose, did you change? Or did you change in your life?
What we did was take out all grains, all starchy carbs. So that was the first step. The first step was taking out vegetable oils, all vegetable oils. They went out, this was 15 years ago. So, canola oil or sunflower oil. Or, I used to read the labels and go, oh, sunflowers. I love sunflowers. Sunflower oil can't be that bad. It's awful and dreadful. And if ever you see sunflower oil, even on a packet of crisps or whatever, don't bother. Just don't bother. So detrimental to our health. Now, if they're cooked in tallow or lard, go for it. Because saturated animal fats are where it's at, and that's what we need,
I mean, we grew up on Vitalite. Do you remember those tubs?
We had that, yeah.
You get that round tub, like a golden tub with this yellow...
Stuff
is the best word to describe it, isn't it? I mean, it ain't... That's another little thing I've changed is butter. We only use butter. We've only been using butter for years now.
There's a famous thing, isn't there, about margarine in that initially it was grey. And they changed it somehow with whatever additive or coloring agent to make it obviously to mimic butter.
Butter,
Yeah, to make it look more palatable.
Yeah, man. They have to deodorize it. They have to reflavor it. They have to recolor it. They have to. It's toxic nonsense. Margarine and vegetable oils are just. We used to have flora when I was growing up as well.
Yeah.
I seem to think it was like an industrial byproduct as well. But maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Quite often, there's a famous. Well, I don't know if it's famous, but I've heard that there's such a thing as grape seed oil. In that, when from vineyards, it's obviously a byproduct, I assume, from all the pulp and the mush and stuff when they've crushed the grapes. What can we do with these seeds? And apparently they make oil out of it, but they've got to process it so unbelievably minutely in order to remove all of the bad flavors and things like that, essentially, to make it somewhat palatable.
And you know what's dreadful as well is they use cottonseed oil in animal feeds, and that's called glossipol, and it's so toxic. So the poor animals in the cheap feeds are getting, when you say, "Oh, I'd like some pasture-raised, grass-finished beef," it's because you want something that hasn't been given cottonseed oil or grains, because a ruminant, you were saying they've got so many stomachs and the stomachs are full of bacteria to deal with the plant cellulose. They're not equipped to deal with grains, really, and yet we give grains to all our animals. Really, that's asking for trouble. It's too rich, it's too much for them. It's a fattening ploy. It's a ploy to make them fatter quicker to get more money, basically.
Yeah, a lot of our problems stem from the profit motive, don't they? And extracting as much money as possible from the land available or the animals available.
That's it. But as I described earlier, that one with 100,000 Beating Hearts, that little short film, I highly recommend everyone goes and looks at that. The regenerative agricultural model is profitable and it is more intensive than intensive. You get much more out of the land and you build the soil at the same time, sequestering carbon, which is something I believed in at one point. But you build deep, dark soils and you keep the water clean, therefore, and you actually give homes to all the birds and the bees and the buzzing insects and Will Harris on his farm has a colony of bald eagles. They probably nick a few chickens and stuff, but who cares? It's the web of life is strengthened by regenerative agriculture.
One of the terms that I hadn't come across when I was looking at your website was GAPS, and I think you mentioned it before. Can you explain that to me, what it means?
GAPS stands for gut and psychology syndrome. It's a bit of a mouthful. A syndrome is something that you don't know what's causing it, kind of thing. I mean, there's a myriad of things that are causing the problems with people, but simply speaking, GAPS is about gut healing. Right. It's about healing the gut. It's a nutritional protocol. It's a way of eating that means you are getting ultimate nourishment and cleansing all at the same time. We use animal products a lot and organic veg and some fruits, and we use lentils and some beans, and we can make breads out of coconut flour and cakes and things out of lentils. Actually, I make a really nice cake out of lentils, believe it or not. So we can have kind of baked goods and a bit of fried bread with our bacon and egg or whatever, but we're not eating any grains or pseudo grains. We have a few seeds. We have pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. We have honey. So there's a wide variety of foods to enjoy. We don't eat anything processed, don't eat anything with veg oil in it. And it's cooking. It means cooking.
It kind of sounds like a pre-agricultural diet that you sort of living, like you think back in, before the Bronze Age when people were living off the land, maybe herders, maybe they had herds of sheepies and piggies and cows and whatnot, but they weren't agriculture in the sense that they were, the main crops were grain for bread and such,
Yeah.
and that was the staple, I guess. You know, once you get into the historical era, bread becomes the staple in everyone's diet.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? And then there's that phrase, give them bread and circus.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what's that? What does that mean? Give them bread and circus. Why? Because bread, actually, wheat, gluten, if you've got leaky gut, which probably, a very high percentage of the population does, it is not well digested. So that protein, gluten, resembles morphine. It's called glutomorphine, literally, right? So if you've got leaky gut and you eat a lot of bread, and we used to have bread, well, we used to have wheat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because we used to have some kind of cereal for breakfast, and we used to have like a sandwich for lunch and a pizza or pasta for supper. We used to have wheat 3 times a day, right? And it resembles a morphine. So that means it's like a drug. It's like a drug. It kind of dopes you and you get dozy and your brain is sort of like dosed and docile, you know? So, yeah, it's like it's slave food.
I've certainly had that experience. Like, if I have a big sandwich at dinner time, pretty much I need to have a nap. I don't feel like doing anything in the afternoon often.
It is a baton, though. It's not a sandwich, is it?
Yeah, if you're going to have bread, you might as well go hard, haven't you? You know?
Yeah, it's a baguette, isn't it? With, mayo?
No, I have various different
Sausages.
ones. They're all protein heavy, so I feel like I'm making up for it. But
Okay.
I remember going through a phase years ago where I had time to come home and I would have like scrambled eggs instead for dinner. And I felt a lot better and I lost weight and I was able to do more in the afternoon. It was just getting the time that was the issue.
Yeah. And I mean, a nice piece of steak or some roast chicken thighs or a little, pork chop or whatever, or meat and animal-based products. So we also use a lot of raw dairy. We source raw milk and then we ferment it into milk kefir or yogurt, cultured cream, and those 24-hour fermentation processes pre-digest all the lactose. And then it's really difficult to be lactose intolerant to something that hasn't really got much lactose in it. So loads of people will say, oh, I've got a cow's milk. I've got lactose intolerance. I can't do cow's milk. It makes me all snotty. And I made that happen to us. And then I gave my kids soy milk for 3 years or 4 years, which was a disaster, darling.
Really?
Yeah, absolute disaster. Messes with your hormones. It's an endocrine disruptor. These nut milks are dangerous. So, if you think, oh, I'm allergic to cow's milk, I'll go for the nut milks instead because that's a better option. Don't do it. Don't do it. But find raw milk because pasteurized milk is indigestible. Pasteurized cow's milk is completely indigestible.
And it's essentially just white water by the time it gets to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a bit of sugar in it, and yeah.
I want to try it. I've never had it, unless we maybe had it when we were kids.
We did. We had it was a green top. I can kind of vividly remember my parents. My dad, it would have been probably, would not have pasteurized milk, and then eventually I think he was forced to because the milkman stopped doing it. But that's the other thing is I suppose is access to it, readily available access to it. Whereas that was just a standard thing from our milkman at the time. In the 80s and the 90s that he would just drop it off or whatever.
There is a raw milk map people can go and look up.
Right.
Raw milk map, and also there's an organization called the Weston A. Price Foundation, which is a really great organization that promotes real food, and they have a raw milk map as well.
So you can have dairy, you can have meat, you can have some veggies and some fruits. What the grains, I guess, is the big no-no. Sugar, I guess, as well is a big no-no.
You can have honey.
You can have honey.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking about like how we eat at home with me and our kids and that, even though we eat pasta and rice and potatoes and stuff, even though we don't exclude any of that, I still struggle to come up with ideas to make for tea every night. So, what can I do? How can I restrict our diet and yet get more ideas for what we can make?
You join my Timeless Cookery Club, and then you see all the videos and like get ideas. No, but you can read books. There's ideas left, right, and center. But it does feel really weird when you say, right, I can't. I'm not going to have. People think, how can I restrict my diet? And my child will go hungry if they don't have those carbs. And the truth is, it takes a lot of energy for your body to digest the complex carbohydrates. So when your body not using that energy to digest these complex sugars, it's got more energy and more minerals, because it takes a lot of minerals to digest starchy carbs as well. So you'll have more energy and more minerals by not eating them. And then imagine 2 roasted chicken thighs on your plate with some asparagus, with some garlic butter on it, and maybe some roasted swede that's been in the oven with some turnips. Even roasted turnips are actually yummy they've got to be smothered in good fat. They've got to be like smothered in tallow or lard and then roasted so they're a bit crispy on the outside, and dress everything with fats. So here's the thing: if you're not going to eat the sugars, where are you going to get your source of fuel from? It's going to be fats, and fats are an amazing source of energy. And your brain is 50% saturated fat by dry weight. Mother's milk is 50% saturated fat. And so we give the babies the mother's breast milk, and then we expect them to eat farley, rusks or, baby rice or whatever. It's like, duh, no, we should be giving them a chicken bone to teethe on. It's perfect size to hold on to. It's got those 2 knobs, and we should be giving them little chicken thigh bones to teethe on, and be giving them chicken stock in their bottles, and getting their microbiome, their gut bugs, attuned and ready to receive high fat and protein. Because when we're feeding babies baby rice, all we're doing is encouraging a microbiome that will be able to digest sugars. And then those gut bugs will be telling you all day long to go and eat the donut.
Right. Like a vicious circle in that way.
Yeah,
Self-fulfilling.
Well, it's a vicious circle of donut eating. Yeah.
exactly. Or bagels,
Yeah.
Or, you like my bagel goggles. Yeah.
Bagel goggles are out.
It's how you view the world. You might view the world
Tasty
through
look good then.
Alchemy.
Sorry.
You might see the world through a haze of the opiates of the masses, as I call them, because of that glutamorphine effect. And when you stop taking drugs, suddenly, take off the bagel goggles, suddenly the world looks like a really different place. And the next time you see a donut, wherever, you'll be like, no way. I'm not going back there where I felt so dull and doped up. And this is from my own personal experience. I'm sharing here, and countless clients and other people, because The Gaps, actually, that book has been translated into 26 different languages, and it's actually a worldwide phenomenon, but nobody knows about it.
Well, I was just thinking about, the push. I don't know, we've been in the 60s and 70s to move away from, saturated fat, high fat kind of, or would have been considered high fat diet, heavy meat, protein, that kind of thing, towards, cereals, essentially.
The food pyramid.
Yeah.
We played a picture of it from the FDA, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I liked your introduction. Yeah, it had some good pictures and stuff. That whole story, the heart diet hypothesis, started in the 1950s with a guy called Ansel Keys. And he invented the K ration, which was the ration that was developed for the troops in World War II. And he was also the guy who did the first experiments on human starvation, and he used conscientious objectors as his guinea pigs.
That's
Yeah,
pretty dark.
yeah. And then he wheedled his way into, I think it was the American Medical Association, or maybe it was the American Heart Association, I forget, but he got in there, board of directors, I don't know, and started to push this idea that saturated fats would give you heart disease. So he's a bit of a Fauci type character. Really.
Was he being paid by the sugar lobby as well? Because that would make sense.
Question, Phil, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was. Yeah.
I did. Sorry, go on.
No, that's just a story you hear that the move from in the 70s, I guess this is a bit later because it was in the 70s, is that the sugar lobby was one of the main drivers behind this messaging, changing public health perceptions against fat and towards carbs and glucose and what do they call it? Fructose, high fructose corn syrup. They put it in everything because of this lobby. Another agricultural lobby that has all these hundreds and thousands of acres making corn for corn syrup.
And there was massive surpluses of it, wasn't there? Essentially, they said, "What are we going to do with all this corn? Oh, we can make syrup out of it and put it in everything." Essentially,
and then so we'll make everyone a little bit ill, and then we'll have lots of customers for our pharmaceuticals. You know, this is the way it seems to me that it was arranged and organized. But what do I know? I'm just seeing it that way, but who knows?
I mean, the way I see it is there's no money in curing people.
No.
Yeah.
You know, you want a customer for life. If you can just keep them barely alive, barely functioning, that's great. Your quid's in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. God, I'm so cynical.
You are.
But then it feels ever so empowering then to go into the supermarket, and as you're walking down the aisles and you see all the breakfast cereals, and have you seen that breakfast cereal with Crave? It's called Crave, literally Krave.
Yeah, it's in one of the the supermarket you go to, the competitor. Sorry, I mean
Aldi.
Yeah, I didn't think we were allowed to name things on this podcast.
I mean, you can if you're slagging them off.
Right, okay, Aldi. It's in Aldi, yeah. What would you think of me if I once bought a box of that?
I used to eat it all day long. I used to have three bowls of Frosties when I got in from school. I used to,
Nice.
I just used to eat all that all day long, right? And so I know what it felt like to be that way. And now I know what it's like to go into the supermarket and go down those aisles where all those things are. And it's like I've got these bullshit detectors, and it's like beep, 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 beep. Danger, danger. Well, don't go down there. Or like I'm not. It's actually really empowering. It's like you're like I'm not eating that rubbish. It's how I feel. I find it quite empowering. And now, listen, I'm human. I ate a crunchy the other day, and it was lush, right? It was really, I loved it. But I'm not going to make a habit of eating anything that I know is going to it's actually going to pull away and diminish my life force. I want to be strong and vibrant and adaptable and resilient. And these days, it's worth taking responsibility for your own health so that you can be a shining example, and then also hold the fort, because there's so many people struggling out there. Nearly everyone's they know someone that they've got to care for.
Yeah.
And autism is through the roof. And these young kids are actually got levels of toxicity in their brain and in their nervous system that we can actually cleanse, and we get much more fuller functioning people when we use the food as the medicine to heal and seal a leaky gut.
Someone's just asked.
Right.
I keep cutting you off.
It's all right. I just want to ask about olive oil.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's just Emma's asking about sourdough.
Oh, right. Sourdough bread. Is that? I mean, it's got to be better than the stuff you get in the high street, surely. Homemade sourdough bread.
Yeah, I mean, you've just got to say, where did you get your grain from? Where did the grain come from that made the flour? What field did it grow in? Was it sprayed with anything, or is it completely organic? Is it biodynamic? Is it, what was the grain that made the flour? And then, okay, once you've got the flour, you can make sourdough, and that's great. Fermenting things properly. He, using soaking and sprouting and fermenting is the ancestral way, the slow way to properly prepare grains and pulses and seeds and things. And so we do that on the GAPS protocol. We ferment, we sprout, we soak, we get rid of the phytates, the anti-enzymes, the lectins, and these other naturally occurring plant toxins that actually wreak havoc with our digestion if you don't prepare them correctly, basically.
Yeah, olive oil. Two-part question. What do you think about taking olive oil, just drinking it, and also cooking? Like, if you were frying up some mince or a steak or something, would you put anything in the pan first, like butter or olive oil or anything like that?
I used to use olive oil in a hot pan, and I'd just like whack it in. Then I'd put in my chopped garlic, and it would sizzle, and smoke would come off it a little bit if I wasn't paying attention. And basically, I was creating trans fatty acids and poisons for myself by doing that. Now I only use saturated animal fat if I'm going to fry something.
Would
If
that
I'm
be
going
lard?
lard, tallow, goose fat, duck fat, ghee. You can use coconut oil. It is a saturated fat as well, but I always say, why send a boy to do a man's job? Because coconut oil isn't going to deliver the goods. It's the animal fats that really do it, that really make you well. So start off with a nice big knob of lard or a knob of tallow. Let that can fry at really high temperatures without the chain of fatty acids being destroyed. Right. You cannot use a vegetable oil. So the only olive oil you should be using is cold pressed, extra virgin, and sold in a dark glass bottle. And I can't guarantee that would be pure olive oil, because they do tend to cut, if it's not a really reputable company, they may have cut it with some other vegetable oil, in which case you don't want to eat it.
So, sorry. Go on. Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, the best way to enjoy a really good olive oil, I don't know about just drinking it, but you can make a nice salad dressing, and then, yes, enjoy your raw, uncooked, extra virgin, cold pressed olive oil. Go for it. It's like a little mini gallbladder flush. Why were you talking about drinking it?
Because I'm obsessed with ancient Rome, and they used to bathe in it and drink it constantly, and
I've seen people drinking shots. It's often, I see it quite frequently reported, in different things about groups of people having a shot of, cold pressed olive oil.
Yeah. There's a chap called Andreas Moritz, and he's not with us anymore, but he recovered from debilitating juvenile arthritis and recommended something called the liver and gallbladder flush. And that is literally like a half a litre of olive oil. I don't know if it's quite that much, but it's a big quantity of extra virgin olive oil with some grapefruit juice. So that's a bit like a salad dressing, isn't it? Lemon and olive oil, or vinegar and oil. It's a bit like a salad dressing, but drink it in quantity, and then you take Epsom salts, I think, and it's to flush out your whole system, basically, to start again. I would not recommend anybody did that necessarily, but if you make a little salad dressing, it's like a mini gallbladder flush, every day with a salad. But not everyone can handle eating a salad even these days. They get bloated and uncomfortable because leaky gut, and or they got IBS, or they got whatever they've got. But all disease begins in the gut, so let's just heal and seal the gut, and then it's going to regulate.
Something you mentioned when you were talking about olive oil, which rang for me, was the glass bottle, and everything we get now, if you shop at the supermarket, is wrapped and coated in plastic. And years ago, when me and the missus first moved in to eat together. In fact, when we've had kids, I remember we used to microwave stuff in plastic bowls, and I will not eat anything like now. I have to tell her off if I see her sneaking some beans in a plastic bowl. And she goes, well, it's microwavable. It's 10 years old. You know, it's not going to be, you know, even if they say it's microwavable, I'm not having it. I'm not eating it.
Well, I threw away my microwave about 25 years ago. Threw away. I didn't actually ever have a microwave, but I've been encouraging my family and all my friends and all my clients to just never ever microwave anything. If you take off the glass thing that's on the bottom of the microwave and have a look at it, it's actually got like a symbol on it of it's actually the glass or the whatever it's made of is in a certain shape, and that's how it rotates or whatever. But if you look at it, it looks like the
radioactive thing, doesn't
symbol for radioactivity. It's not funny. It completely
Stop
deadens.
laughing then.
You've got to laugh or else you cry. Laugh is the best medicine. But I mean, you know, it deadens the food completely. It takes any last vestige of nutrition out of the food when you microwave it.
Really?
It's dreadful.
So it destroys what it's made of, essentially, by cooking it. In order to cook it, that's how it works, essentially.
Yeah. I don't know how they work. I mean, I haven't really studied it, but Dr. Natasha, who's my guru, and I'm really a mouthpiece for Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, and the back of her books are thick like that with references of scientific papers that she's studied.
Is she Russian?
Yes.
This is where I heard about the ruminants and the stomachs.
Oh.
And yes, I'm sure I've heard Natasha on Delin Paul's podcast. If I'm not getting mixed up.
I think Paul from Nutrient Nirvana interviewed her as well.
Oh, wow. Right. Cool.
She wrote the foreword for my book, so I'm happy about that.
When did you write the book? Was it before the craziness or after the 2020 stuff?
2024, I wrote it.
Wow, so it came out last year?
Yeah, it's just out. And I've just finished recording the Audible version, so that'll be up soon. In fact, I'm going to offer people the opportunity to get that for free if they would kindly go and leave me a review. So, yeah.
And that'll be on Audible, will it?
I think so, yeah. That's where we'll put it, yeah.
Wow, that's exciting. How have you written books before?
It was my first go, actually, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I'm going to write another book. I'm going to write a book about how to make babies because there's going to be a massive fertility crisis anytime soon.
Well, I think we're in the midst of that, aren't we?
Yeah, I think it's already happening.
So I was just wondering, you mentioned about having chickens, I think, earlier. I don't know if that was off air. I don't know if that's secret information. But I was just wondering, do you then attempt to grow what you can where you live, essentially?
Yeah. I used to have a small holding in Forest Row in Sussex, and there we had something that we called a pig club, and we had lamb share, and we had the Great Easter Egg Experiment, which we then called the Coop Co-op. So we were working with whoever wanted to come and get involved. We had 14 families sharing the care of a flock of chickens. So you'd only have to visit once a fortnight, and you could feed them your scraps, which DEFRA will tell you you're not allowed to do. But if it's a private members association, it's none of their business because they're public servants. And so we had Pig Club, and the people would co-own the pigs. I would have a quarter share in a pig, in a little hog. And we would feed them sprouted beans and barley. And if somebody had a function or a do, we'd take all the food and feed it to the pigs. I used to go and collect the grocers, the biodynamic grocer there had bins full of slightly gone off lettuces and strawberries and buns and I don't know what. And they ate like kings, those pigs, and they foraged underneath the oak trees, and they were really well fed. So yeah, I have slaughtered my own pigs. I have eaten my own pigs. I've eaten my own chickens. We had lambs one year as well. But now I just have chickens. But we had to see the cockerel off the other day because he flapped up at my mother and she toppled over and hurt her ankle. And I was like, right, that's it. And so he got the chop and we made coq au vin.
I was just going to say, was it coq au vin?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It was delicious.
What about veggies? Do you do a lot of veggies at home?
Yeah, I used to run a community supported agriculture scheme, which means I would do 20 veg boxes every week. And people would pay me a tenner or 20 quid. I forget now what we did. This was 10 years ago. And I would just give them a share of the crop, which is a great way of doing it because you got guaranteed money every week and they just get what you manage to grow. And so I had raised beds on about half an acre, and I would run it with volunteers and helpers from organizations like WOOF UK, Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, or HelpX, Work Away, those kind of organizations where people will work in exchange for their board and lodging, that kind of thing.
And I think you mentioned that potatoes were a bit of a no-no as well. What is it about potatoes?
Don't say that.
I know, they were my favorite. Mash was my, like, I don't feel well, mummy, and she'd bring me a bowl of mash. And I think love it with loads of melty butter on it and grated cheese and maybe some ketchup. Oh my God, lush. But they are so high in oxalates. If you're going to eat them, right, here's the way to do it is you would boil them in their skins and then let them cool completely, right? And then peel the skin off. And then you're either going to cook them more and mash them or cook them by chopping them up small and frying them like fried potatoes or roasting them or whatever. Again, plenty of good fats. And then serve them with some kind of cultured cream or cream cheese or something that's high in calcium, something that's high in minerals, and also good fats, because then you won't eat so much potato. You'll be eating more of the good stuff, and
Right.
and then the oxalates will bind to the calcium in dairy rather than the oxalates be free flowing around your body. But then, of course, you're binding to the calcium in the good stuff, so then you don't have access to it. And for me, it's a no-brainer. Also, there's those starchy carbs again. Takes a lot of energy to actually break them down into tiny building blocks, monosaccharides, and they're going to use up your minerals. So I love them. I used to love them. I don't eat them. I'm growing them at the moment for my mum. I've got a veg patch here, and I try to grow low oxalate vegetables, but you can't convert everyone. And if they're happy, let them do what they want to do.
Yeah,
Depends
so
how you feel.
it's not a case of you can use the soil, that the soil at your disposal might be better. It's just inherent in the potato itself. There's no sort of getting around it.
It's a naturally occurring plant toxin.
Right.
Now, maybe back in the day when the soils were much more mineral rich, maybe the plants would not have had to use so much oxalates as a deterrent to pests. Maybe because pests in the garden, slugs and snails and whatever, they are there. I understood this because I worked for 10 years in this community supported agriculture scheme. I was a professional horticulturalist and I grew veg for a living. Pests are there in the garden to fulfill a function. They're not just there to annoy you and eat your seedlings, they are there to clean up the debris of the stuff that's nearly dying. Right. So if you've got a really strong plant with a really strong, auric field, and it's like really vibrant and got all its building blocks, it's got all its minerals, and it's got it well enough watered and the ground's mulched nicely and all that jazz, that plant's going to grow and nothing's going to eat it. Nothing's going to eat it because it's got everything it needs. It's like us. Dis-ease comes when we're weakened, when we haven't got enough minerals, when we haven't got the building blocks to fix ourselves up properly. And it's usually because we're fat deficient and mineral deficient. Your brain's 50% saturated fat. Mother's milk is 50% saturated fat. We need saturated fats, and we've been lied to, told a big fat lie, there's a book by that name, that saturated fats will give you heart disease, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's the veg oils and the starchy carbs that are going to give you heart disease. And Dr. Natasha's covered that in her book called Atherosclerosis, Put Your Heart in Your Mouth, if you want to go and study the details. But
Right, yeah. Because again, it ties in with that low fat propaganda from the 70s. It sort of coincided with the cholesterol. All of a sudden, cholesterol became something that's a dirty
Bad.
word and something you have to be worried about as well. And you better go to the doctor once a year
Yeah.
and get your
And
cholesterol
I
tested.
will never have my cholesterol measured. I don't care, and I'm not interested. They can take a running jump because they change the goalposts all the time anyway. You know, I'm never getting my cholesterol measured. I'm not interested at all. And neither will I have a mammogram or any other kind of invasive, like, what do they call it? A smear. That's a nice word, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always thought that. It's a very strange term to give that procedure, isn't it?
It's invasive and horrible. It's a fear-mongering, horrible thing. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in having my boob squeezed between two bits of glass and X-rayed either. It's like, no. What you do is you just eat correctly and you cleanse. So I'll take a coffee enema. If you've got one of those going, I'll take a coffee enema. That'd
Not
be
in
lovely.
here, no.
But yeah, these other procedures are like, nah, not interested. Steering clear. You know.
Is coffee all right? Tea, coffee? We didn't really talk about drinks, did we at all? But,
Right. Well, yeah, caffeine is a bit of a bitch. Caffeine really messes up your adrenals. You get a little hit. Do you know what? The thing with coffee is I look at the logo of Starbucks. Do you know what it is?
yeah, it's that old ancient Greek goddess of the sea. Oh, I'm blagging on her name now.
The sirens. I think
Yeah.
they were lots of them, but they were like these beautiful mermaids who would sit on the rocks, luring unwary mariners to their death, you know? And they make you pay for the privilege. And I don't know if you've seen on Insta and stuff lately, the people have been going, this is a big Starbucks, and this is a medium Starbucks, and this is a small Starbucks. And they pour one into the other, and it's all the same bloody measurement. Unless that was a joke. I don't know. But yeah, caffeine's a bit of a bitch. And then tea is very high oxalate.
Oh, is it?
I had a client recently, he could hardly walk. He was up in the middle of the night. He was in pain. His feet were killing him. He couldn't sleep. He had insomnia. He was in a bad way. And I talked to him and he said, oh, I love my tea, but the more I can never quench my thirst. I said, how many cups of tea are you drinking? About 8. I was like, rah, try having Red Bush. Try substituting some of those cups of tea with Red Bush, which has no caffeine and no oxalates in it. So he swapped to Red Bush gradually because you don't want to do anything too hard and fast when you're making changes in your diet. You want to gently do it because if you go in too hard and fast, you may get some really big reactions, and then you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. You know, but this guy, in about 2 weeks, he was sleeping through the night and his pain was gone, and it was the tea.
What's Red Bush?
Or rooibos, Red Bush, rooibos tea. It's from South Africa.
Right. Never heard of it.
We went through a phase of having that at home. Didn't take off in our household, unfortunately.
Because there's no caffeine, and oxalates can kind of be a little bit addictive as well. People like tend to lean towards the foods that are actually causing the problems. I recognize in my practice with my clients, if they're like, oh, I love my potatoes, I can't say goodbye to my potatoes. It's like potatoes are causing a problem.
Wow, you're so dependent on them.
I'm dependent on potatoes, I think.
Well, I'll take the caffeine then because
Yeah.
I have more coffee than
Sense.
definitely. Yeah. My blood type is Nescafe. Emma, we've
An advert for Nescafe when I was an actress. I'm so ashamed to say.
we didn't talk about your previous career. We've gone over an hour already.
You have to
Emma's
come
an
back and talk about the
actress.
acting
I
years.
can talk another day. People get
Yeah.
bored after an hour.
No, I'm sure they haven't. You've had so much information. I'm gonna have to rewatch this one again and go through it before I try and implement some more changes. Gradual changes.
Gently,
Yeah.
gently.
Maybe just go down to 9 coffees a day to start with. But before we let you go, Emma, let everyone know where they can follow up and find you and what you've got in the pipeline.
Thank you. So I'm going to be starting a little live stream with Paul from Nutrient Nirvana. We're going to
Cool.
do Wellness Wednesdays Wide Awake Wellness Wednesday, something, I don't know. It'll be on a Wednesday, probably about 7:30, I think, or 6:30. Anyway, we're going to sort that out. And you'll find me at Timeless Cookery on Instagram and YouTube. I do little interviews with people, and I do silly reels talking about the food as the medicine and little recipes. And I've got my book, Bagel Goggles, which has got a lot of recipes in it. And it's a sort of a paradigm shifting spell book, as well as a recipe book, as well as a bit of a biography. And it's light-hearted, and it will hopefully leave you feeling joyful because it's full of remedy and solution, whilst observing the problems. I'm saying, but don't worry, you can do this. Because living in fear of all the toxins and the scary stuff out there actually does you in quicker than anything.
Fear is the mind killer.
Yeah, fear is the mind. That's June, isn't it?
That's June, yeah.
I quote that in the first chapter of my book.
Wow, what a synchronicity.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to pick that book up because I need recipe help and
You are the chef.
ideas. I am head
De
chef.
maison.
I am a domestic engineer, first class, head chef, fully qualified.
Yeah.
Good work.
So yeah, I definitely need more ideas. I'm going to pick it up. But this has been great. Loads of fun, Emma. Really nice to meet you.
Yes.
Thank
Lovely.
you so much for having me. I've enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. The links are in the show notes anyway. If people want to follow up, there'll be a link to the book and the YouTube and the website there. So please follow Emma and get some tips. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Emma. Have a lovely
Rest of your evening.
rest of the Sunday. We're going to take a brief recess, me and Matt, and we're going to come back and do some silly news probably.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
TimelessCookery.com, that's the one. Well done.
What's that,
Forgot
sorry?
the website. I forgot the website. You've just put it up there, TimelessCookery.com.
Oh,
Well
right.
done.
Oh, yes. Yep.
TimelessCookery.com.
Right. Stand by. See you soon, folks. We're back in 10.
Love, love, love.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Emma.
Bye.
Bye.